Hey guys, my name is Pitt Connor with the Flagship Niagara League. This is Brent Hanley, our winter rigger.
How do you do it?
Just thought we'd be doing a quick walkthrough of the rig shop, show you guys what's going on for the check-in. So I'll flip this around and we can just do kind of a brief walkthrough of the different projects. All right, Brent. So you might take a walkthrough. You can kind of show
Sure,
us
absolutely.
things we're working on.
Yeah, so getting started in the winter, our first main challenge was really getting the covers back on the ship so they were protected. Normally we'd be doing that in October, maybe November, but in this particular year, our challenge was getting that done in January. So we were fighting the ice and snow to have that happen. So it put us a little bit behind schedule, but we're opening up some big projects this year. This is Niagara's main top mist. And we have, for the upper length of it here in the center, completely wooded it. We've taken down all of the varnish or covering paints completely down to the bare wood. And we did that for a couple of reasons this year. Was to get access to, you can see some touchman or graving pieces. The graving pieces where we cut out old damaged wood and then epoxied in new pieces to keep the dimensions of the mast while eliminating some of the damage that comes from the normal wear and tear of the yards and the sails being suspended from this mast. So we completely brought that down, and especially there was some issues on the head of the mast, the upper side here, where the trestle trees and the cross trees that make the cross trees up aloft, where those sit on the mast, we found a little rot pocket right here that needs to be addressed by Adam the carpenter. So again, we took away all of the covering, the paint that normally protects the mast from the elements. We stripped all of that away to really get a look underneath and make sure that the health of the mast in all of the rest of this area is up to snuff. So it's a good thing to do periodically, is to get underneath those coatings and make sure that there aren't any hidden problems, but that's what we're addressing this year. Other than that, on Letty's side of things, simultaneously working on Niagara and Letty G. Howard, we have some more spars down here. All of these yellow ones here are spars for the Letty G. These two are gaffs, the piece that holds the upper side of the sail, and the boom sits below and holds the lower side of the fore and aft sails that Letty carries. And the gaff, normally being down, is raised with the halyards to stretch the sail in between those two yards. So similarly, we've got some work to do paint-wise to get rid of damage that happens from the normal wear and tear of using the sails. And then these will be recoated as well. But an interesting thing, a fun project, was cleaning up all of the leathers. These jaws that sit around the mast pick up what we call slush. It's a lubricant that we coat the entire mast with so that as the gaff is picked up to raise the sail, it slides on the mast rather than getting caught along the way. And to help protect that, we use chafe gear. In this particular application, it's thick cut saddle leather. So we have stripped away, finally, all of the slush that collected on that. Slush is a mixture of pine tar and Vaseline, normally in our particular mixture. We stripped away all that lubricant to get down to the bare leather, and to condition that, we're using neat's foot oil to get deep down into the grain of the leather and keep it healthy. And then on top of that, we're going to coat it with lanolin, which is a byproduct of sheep's wool. It's really good for natural fiber, things like that. It's a very interesting product. It's really super water resistant. So it's good for keeping water out of the leather and resisting rot. It's also very slippery and lubricating, just like the slush is. But it also gets down into the fibers because it's also a natural material. That's the sheep actually produce lanolin for the same reason, is to protect their skin. It is produced by the pores in their skin and works its way into the wool. So it's a completely natural product. Protects their skin from nicks and scrapes, and the same deal with this leather that used to be a can. It protects it from damage as well. Really cool product. Love lanolin. Smells really good too.
So I just left to check out the rig shop.
Yeah. That's where the real work happens. Coatings are very, very important, uh, but it's the rigging, in my view, that really keeps the ship together. So, speaking of coatings, we have been doing a lot of work on these deck boxes. Letty carries last season 36 passengers on deck, and giving them a place to uh, take a load off and rest for a moment is important. It is also important safety equipment. These deck boxes are also where we carry all of our PFDs, our personal flotation devices. We're required to have easy access from the deck to all of our safety equipment. So these make a perfect uh, double duty piece of furniture on the ship to give rest to our passengers on the Letty, and then also help protect us by stowing all of that safety equipment, those PFDs, away safely. And having them ship shape and pretty is an added bonus. So we're taking our time and trying to get these shined up real nice for this upcoming season. The rest of what we've been doing down here in the rig shop specifically is inspecting and repairing and maintaining all of the rigging that supports the sails for Letty. All of this on these shelves is specifically the Letty G. Howard rigging. I think you got a glimpse in the last show of Niagara's rigging. Letty is much simpler rigged than Niagara is, a fore and aft vessel rather than the square sails that Niagara carries. So she has a fraction of the amount of rigging, but it's still taken us to length. It's not quite a mile, I think. I could be wrong on that, but Niagara's is 6 miles of running rigging. Letty doesn't come anywhere near that much because she carries a fraction of the amount of sail. But it's still very, very important. I was talking earlier with the wood that the weather, the wind and the rain, and especially the UV exposure from sunlight will very easily degrade things if they're left out unattended to. So it's not just the wood of the ships that we have to keep a close eye on. It's also the line. There's a health to the line as well. UV will break stuff down, especially synthetic line. Manila is a natural fiber, and it is subject to rot. If water gets into it and can set and bacteria can grow, it will eat the manila fibers essentially, and rot forms. Synthetic fibers were developed to be stronger and more rot resistant than natural fibers, but they suffer from that UV degradation. If you let synthetic fibers, which are essentially plastics, sit out in the sun for too long, the UV will break apart the molecules of that constitute the line, and you have to keep a really close eye on them. So all of this line, every last inch of it, our professional crew had to go through each and every inch of it, checking it for wear from the normal wear and tear, checking it for UV degradation, and also looking at the inside of the line to make sure that there weren't any hidden issues in there as well. It depends on the type of line that you're looking at. Things like the diameter, if it was notably smaller in certain areas, it can show that problems are happening. But oftentimes, you'll find specific breaks. Obviously, this line was continuous, and then it got to a spot, and then it broke open. That would be a problem that we would have to address. And we found, a dozen or so issues of that nature that we had to separate that stuff out from the rest of the rigging, pull it apart, and make decisions about whether it could be repaired or if it had to be completely replaced with brand new line. And so we're still finishing out those projects, but for the most part, Letty is squared away and ready to go. The other big job was maintaining all of her blocks. The blocks are one piece of that block and tackle system that gives us mechanical advantage or redirects our force when we're pulling on lines from down on deck. It can send the direction of forces in a different direction to properly set the sails or take them in or maintain what the boat is doing. And all of these blocks then have purposes and names, and we had to break them out. This one in particular is the force sheet upper block. So that controls what the fore boom is doing, how far out it can swing to one side or the other to best catch the wind. And it is consisted of these wooden cheeks and then metal straps that run down through the cheeks. That's where the main strength comes from. And those metal straps have holes drilled in them to accept a metal pin, which is an axle for these metal shivs. A shiv, Sheave. Spelled differently than some other shivs, but these are what accept the line and allow it easily to be interacted with another block normally to make a tackle, so that one block will draw the other to it and multiply the power that we put into a single line. And then there's always some manner of shackle or attachment point to fix this up into the rig, onto the mast or onto a boom, sometimes directly to the deck. But every last one of them, we had to break apart completely into its constituent parts and re-grease all of those shivs and axles to make sure that they would get through another season safely without undue wear and tear. Stays, arts, and crafts. I love that one. Yeah. Other than that, squaring away Letty, then we got into Niagara projects. In another part of the rig, whereas the Letty G. Howard has bunks for her sailors, Niagara is primarily outfitted with hammocks, a very traditional way of packing a lot of people into a small space, where we have crew rotating, some working, some sleeping, and some having an off time or a meal, and using that same space. What we refer to as the berth deck is where most of the sailors on Niagara would be sleeping or taking a meal, depending on the time of day. As we rotate from one sailor to another, we can double the space that we use on deck if you can take down one hammock and replace it with someone else's as they rotate out on and off of watch. But these hammocks, in a traditional British fashion, have what we call nettles. So there is a single lanyard that is tied into the boat that goes to a metal ring. And then to distribute weight evenly, these nettles are woven in what they call a clue to distribute the weight of, on one side, your shoulders, at the other end, your feet. But with just the simplest of knots, this is literally just a half hitch multiplied for each individual nettle, some 20 times or so. The very simplest of overhand knots, essentially, multiplied across the entire weight, will easily hold all of your body weight. But we had to inspect these as well, just like we did to make sure that there wasn't any degradation. This is that natural fiber manila line that I was talking about, which is susceptible to rot. So we had to individually inspect each one of these as well and make sure that they were ready to hold up a person. And we found a few issues. So there was this one in particular suffered from that issue where we were finding it had gotten wet at some point, and we started to see early signs of rot and broken strands. So we can't trust that for a person, so we had to completely replace it. So that's what we did to probably 18, I think, hammocks, replacing little bits here and there. But it's better to keep up on the maintenance and replace one little thing than to wait until it becomes a real problem and then have to replace the entire issue, or worse, let somebody get hurt. Another thing that we might find interest in is Niagara's pins. So there are belaying pins you may have seen before that we use to secure the lines below on deck from down below when we have them set into the fife rails or the pin rails on the boat. There is the surface to stop them. So there's a top and a bottom side. And when we have a line coming from aloft, we can take turns from the top and then the bottom. And then there's a specific way of making the line secure here. These also we need to keep a really close eye on, because you can see there is a very slight wear pattern right there where just the movement of the line as it is eased from one direction or taken up on and hold on, it will cut through even hard materials. Given enough time, you can do some damage on some metal even. Out of all of Niagara's pins, we will have to go through and check those to make sure that they still have enough meat left to them. And then we have a method of protecting those rather than varnishing them using spar urethane like we had that we were showing earlier in the class, or paint. Those get a mixture of linseed oil applied to soak into the wood and help preserve it against the elements. So to show an example, this is completely dry. It has never been treated. These are ash, I believe. There's a couple of different ways that you can make them, but ash, I believe, is what we have on this particular example. That's one way that we can do it. We've also have the Wood Turners Association, the society here in the area that sometimes makes donations. But yeah, that's something that we can do in-house as well, is make our own pins. And I believe that actually all of this set was made in-house by Tom Bruner. These ones have had a first application of that linseed oil, boiled linseed oil specifically, that gives it that nice, the golden color of that. Yeah, so it has a chance. We completely submerge these in a bath of linseed oil for 2 weeks at a time to give it a chance to really soak into the grain of the wood to help preserve it. That set came out 2 weeks ago and has been drying, and we have another set that has spent 2 weeks in the tank. I think that we have just pulled those out today to be to start the drying process. Yeah, look at those. Those take on that beautiful color of the linseed oil. I'm not sure if the camera and the light can quite pick it up, but we'll set those from the dunk tank. I think I have a little example set aside here that this linseed oil has this beautiful golden honey color to it. But then as it has a chance to dry is the term that we use, but it's really a chemical process where it oxidizes, it polymerizes the molecules that make up the linseed oil will bind together in a complex carbon ring that I don't fully understand. But it turns into this. I wonder if I can get a bit of it. It feels almost like a soft plastic where it turns solid in that polymerization process. So over the course of the season, as the pins that we've treated are exposed to the oxygen in the air, it will harden into a good coating. Very interesting chemistry happening.
That's really cool. I actually have no idea about that.
It's fun stuff that you learn on a tall ship. So we'll keep that on. Boiled linseed oil does have an aspect that, if left to its own devices, it actually, in that polymerization process, generates a bit of heat. As the carbon rings come together, they expel energy, so it actually heats up. So if we're ever cleaning up linseed oil, we have to be very, very careful to dispose of those rags in the correct fashion, because if you ball it up and chuck it over your shoulder and forget about it, in that condensed space of the rag, it can actually generate enough heat to self-ignite. So fire cabinets are a must, where you're storing chemicals, things of that nature, and hanging rags to dry fully and then disposing of them properly at the end of the day is paramount. So was there anything else that you wanted to cover on today's lesson there, Pat?
I think we got a pretty thorough survey. That's been really great. Thank you so much for walking us through. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Brent. Thanks for sharing all of your expertise with us today.
Appreciate it. Hoping to see you guys again soon.